Hello and welcome back to the channel, or if you're new here, welcome. Today I'm going to be following on from the epic, the mammoth video that I released almost a year ago now, which was analysing Alien as a franchise. More of film series examination plus one game. So that was great, I enjoyed doing that, and it's the stuff that's done the best on my channel so far. And the reason I think it did so well is because I have a real deep love for the Alien series, and I think that came through in those videos. There are a couple of things I'm unhappy with, a couple of inaccuracies, but hey ho, I'm learning. Today, I'm going to be looking at Alien in a little bit of a different lens. I'm going to be viewing Alien from an academic perspective.
Ooh, you're hard, showing off.
Now I'm going to do my best to keep it engaging. I don't want it to be an absolute snooze fest, as I don't want to suggest that academic work is a snooze fest, but it can be if you're just having facts thrown at you and sources here and there. I understand why that might not be the most exciting thing for people, so I'm going to try and keep the energy up for this one, I think. So what I'm going to be looking at is the ways in which I believe Alien challenges or defies the concept of male gaze in cinema. And I'm going to be basing it off of Laura Mulvey's definition. Just for some context, Laura Mulvey's theory of the male gaze and how she defines it is detailed in a very influential piece of film research, film studies, which was released in 1975 titled Visual Pleasure and Narrative Cinema. In the article, Mulvey reveals her belief that there are 3 separate male gazes which unite to form what we know as the male gaze. These 3 should be considered when analysing the ways in which popular Hollywood cinema in the mid-20th century treated women as little more than an object to establish male control and authority, whilst giving her no meaningful place in the narrative besides advancing the character arc of a male protagonist and being something nice to ogle. Mulvey proposes that the male gaze can be viewed as a 3-headed serpent, and these heads can be identified like this. The first of these heads is the diegetic gaze of the on-screen male characters. And this is how male characters on screen display dominance, authority and control by the way that they view women in their settings. The second is the directorial gaze, which is a non-diegetic form where the director and the production team, the people behind the camera, they control the way in which women are shown and given authority. And lastly, which is I think the one that has been contested the most within Laura Mulvey's theory, is the spectatorial gaze, which is how the audience view women in film. Now the reason why this part in particular of Mulvey's theory has garnered attention, it's warranted debate, is the fact that this seems to fail to take into consideration the female audience, the female spectators, and the way that they view women in film. Or does it? I'm of the opinion that the male gaze is not exclusively exerted or wielded by males. In a similar way as misogyny, misandry, racism, all types of discrimination, they can be internalized by people belonging to the group being discriminated against. In this video, I'm going to explain the ways in which the second of those heads is tackled, is challenged by Alien. So I'm going to be focusing on the directorial gaze, the non-diegetic form. I'm going to be explaining how the choices made by director Ridley Scott and screenwriter Dan O'Bannon show to us and illustrate to us ways in which the concept of male gaze can be wielded as a tool of feminine liberation as opposed to oppression. So, without further ado, let's get into it. But before we do, if I could be so bold as to ask you to consider liking the video if you enjoy it. If you have taken something interesting from the content and would like to see more in the future, hit that subscribe button and the bell to be notified when I have my next uploads. So, operating under this established framework that I've just given you, related to how Mulvey defines male gaze, we can see in the article that she refers to the study of Freud, well-known misogynist, but still influential and largely respected psychologist. And she refers specifically to his theory of castration anxiety, which can be defined as the fear of loss of or damage to the male genital organ. And this is a troubling psychological trauma which is suffered by young boys when they first realise that their mother does not possess the same genitals as they do, which startles them and causes them discomfort and anxiety. This research is of course born of a rather dated gender binary framework nowadays, at least by nowadays standards, and it does not take the validity of non-binary or trans individuals into account. However, I've opted today to study this film, to study Alien, through the same framework, the same lens that Mulvey and Freud operated within, because this article was some of the most recent film studies research that Ridley Scott and Dan O'Bannon had at their disposal, and it made quite the noise, so I'm certain that they will have made themselves familiar with it. And yet, with that said, it's also this gender binary framework that I believe Alien disrupts by nature of the creature's unapparent gender or sex, offering the xenomorph as a sexually fluid organism. So, Van Buskirk concludes in their article that the male gaze can be disarmed by choosing to intentionally take it on and recalibrate it as your own. Ridley Scott's Alien does just that, progressively recalibrating the socially constructed male gaze in a manner which challenges and perverts the phenomenon, manipulating the concept in order to instill psychological fear within the audience. Lead screenwriter, co-producer and visual effects supervisor Dan O'Bannon has been consistent throughout various recorded interviews with his intention to have his film stir unease in viewers by overtly implying a great deal of sexual violation. In order to accomplish this objective, O'Bannon eagerly implored director Ridley Scott to consider hiring Swiss surrealist artist H.R. Giger to be tasked with realising O'Bannon's vision, after he had been impressed by Giger's dark and twisted imagination. Scott was equally enthused by Giger's body of work, particularly intrigued by his paintings titled Necronomicon 4 and Necronomicon 5, which I'll put up on the screen for you guys now, so you can see how absolutely horrific they are, and I think they definitely made the right choice if they were trying to imply a sexual attack of some nature on the audience, and the rest is history. Giger's work is timeless and it's iconic nowadays within media. It was in the image of these two grotesque paintings that he beseeched Giger to create the xenomorph, which is the film's menacing extraterrestrial killing organism. Groff, MD, hails Giger for what he calls an uncanny ability to depict the deep, dark recesses of the human psyche. Groff suggests that Giger was well versed in other Freudian theory, and specifically tells us Giger often relied on inspiration drawn from his own nightmares when creating his art, applying a self-explorative Freudian technique of dream analysis. Deeper examination of Freud's work also establishes a bridge between Alien and the psychological phenomenon of vagina dentata, which translates to toothed vagina. A lovely image, I'm sure you'll agree, and can be recognised here by nature of the alien's all-devouring sharp teeth, which are hidden behind wet human-like lips. At least that's according to the article of Lister. And Lister goes on to tell us that this nightmarish interpretation of female genitalia is a potent symbol of castration anxiety. The film presents the xenomorph as a sexless, sexual aggressor that happens to possess the likeness of features present within the traditional male and female anatomies. Inside the mouth is the inner mouth, which resembles male genitalia, further confusing the audience as to the creature's sex. It is perhaps plausible to interpret the xenomorph's role as an effort on Scott, O'Bannon and Giger's part to draw upon male fear of the sexually unknown, and it could be said that the genderless and sexless xenomorph represents castration anxiety due to its lack of a penis but also the way in which its head appears to us to be phallic in nature. As if we as an audience are attempting to overcome our own internalized castration anxiety and how we see the creature, not unlike Freud's belief that the intimidated and unsure male will attempt to fetishize women by imagining them to appear more masculine as a coping mechanism for their lack of a phallus. Do you think I've said phallus enough yet? There's much more research that can be dug up. There are more angles to look at this from, but this is just one small sample of the ways in which I think Alien shows us how the concept of male gaze can be utilised as a tool of feminine liberation as opposed to oppression. With this first short video, I hope that I've given you some food for thought and have helped you maybe view Alien from an angle that you hadn't before. Next time I'm going to be looking at the first of the three gazes that Mulvey mentions, and I'll be talking about the diegetic gaze of on-screen male characters. So, join me for that one, subscribe, like the video, and yeah, I'll see you then.